Welcome back to Ask a Fiduciary. Today, we're talking about how to build wealth from scratch. Where do you start, and how do you get to having a successful retirement? Let's check it out. Welcome back. Now make sure before we get started, like the video and hit subscribe where you can get more awesome content just like this. So I have people all the time ask me, they say, Jordan, how do I start out for retirement planning, right? How do I build from scratch? Now maybe you're in your 20s or your 30s, maybe you're in your 40s and you haven't gotten started yet. And sometimes it's overwhelming to get started because you're like, well, where do I start? So what I like to do is give everybody the concept of the one thing, basically the eighth wonder of the world that is on your side. It is called compound interest. Albert Einstein said it best. Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And he's right when he says it. So how do you start from scratch? I like to do a three-pronged approach. The first bucket that we're gonna do when we're getting started from scratch is basically our investment bucket. Now I would put this as a 401k, maybe a Roth IRA. There are certain forms of life insurance that could be great for this bucket. This is the part of the portfolio that we're gonna use to accumulate and build assets for retirement. Now the second bucket, in the process of this second bucket is making it smaller, you all love my art skills, is the debt bucket. The goal is to pay off as much as possible. And the only type of debt that we really wanna have is our debt in our house, because at some point a lot of us would like to buy a home, or a car, but I would prefer at least to have that paid off if possible. With cars being such low interest rates today, it makes sense to have a debt on the car. That way you can pay it off slowly where you don't have to tie up your cash. Your third bucket, and this one is important, is the emergency fund. The vast majority of the population doesn't have $1,000 to access, okay? If you look at a perfect example of COVID, millions of people were unemployed, and millions of those people did not have an emergency fund. It is not fun to build up cash, right? Saving for retirement, there's two types of pain. There's the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. I want the pain of discipline every single time. Because for the people during COVID that lost their jobs and had cash, they were in much better shape. So we want to build up this emergency fund. I'd love to see, ideally by the time you retire, 6 months. And then you could just put this in cash. So to me, this would be the building blocks of where you're trying to build to have a successful retirement. Now the first goal is inside the investing bucket right here. I want to see someone put as much money in this as possible. Put a lot of dollar signs with this. If you look, I might have my numbers a little bit wrong, but if you start off in your early 20s to late 20s and you saved $500 a month, which yes, for a lot of people that's painful, but if the government came by and said, hey, we're gonna take $500 more out of your account for taxes, you'd figure it out. I'd use the same logic with this. If you take that $500, let's say you earned a 7 to 8% return, that is millions of dollars by the time you retire. Now the problem is when you start to do that in your 40s and 50s, to get that same millions of dollar number, you don't have to save $500 a month, you have to save thousands of dollars a month. So if you're younger and you're starting out, it is tough sometimes when you're just getting your career off the ground, you're maybe paying off student loans, and you're trying to build your retirement. The last thing you're maybe thinking is putting money into a 401k. I'm telling you this though, the earlier you start, the less work you have to do in the future because you're leveraging the compound of the eighth wonder of the world, which is again, compound interest. The second thing I like to see with this is get your debt paid off. It's really tempting to go out and swipe a credit card and buy some cool clothes, or maybe get a car that you can't afford, or maybe live in a place that you can't afford. It's the whole idea of the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. Now, a lot of people like to look wealthy, they like to look rich, but they aren't wealthy. It's cool having a really exciting lifestyle. I think it's even cooler where you can get to the point where you're in your 50s and 60s. Maybe if you do it right and you start and you join the FIRE movement, maybe in your 40s, you can have enough money for the rest of your life. Right? It's not a sexy, exciting thing to be frugal or to save or be disciplined. But again, it is the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. And I would hope all of you would choose the pain of discipline versus the pain of regret. Now the emergency fund. If you have no emergency fund right now, I would at least get this to a couple of months as quick as you possibly can. Now obviously these are very, very much a high priority, but again, our investments, as long as we're putting something into those plans, we're basically doing what's called dollar cost averaging. We're taking advantage of the volatility in the market. So when the market falls, we're not happy, but we know we're buying more for less, so as things recover, our recovery is way faster. The second thing right here is obviously paying down the debt. There's good debt and there's bad debt. Bad debt is car debt, student loan debt, medical debt, any sort of consumer debt. If you were gonna have debt, the mortgage and the car would be the two areas that I would say are okay to have. The third option right here, the emergency fund. I like 6 months in that bucket by the time you retire. If you are just starting out, just get 1 month, then get 2 months, then get 3 months, or break it down into let me have a half a month. Let me have just 1 pay period worth of an emergency fund. Let me get 2 pay periods worth, and you're at a month. It's slow and steady. See, I think what happens with a lot of folks who are saving money, for a lot of you guys out there, if you're saving money for retirement, it is overwhelming. How the heck am I gonna get from negative to having hundreds of thousands, if not $1 million by the time I retire? And that's overwhelming. But if you start early, you start in your 20s and 30s, you have to save hundreds of dollars a month, not thousands of dollars a month. If your money grows right to get to that million threshold, you get the bad consumer debt paid off. Once you get that knocked out, you're not paying on that every month. Instead, you're building your emergency fund, and once that's built up, then you double down on this. That is where true wealth is built, and that is how you start from scratch. Now, if you'd like more content just like this, go ahead and click that button below to subscribe, like our video, and we will see you all soon. If you'd like more videos just like this, click the link above and check out some other stuff we have.